In the European Union, we have what is called the Common European Asylum System. Member states need to comply with. It's important to ensure that third countries also have reception systems that function. Primary focus is on candidate countries.
Would we approach the country or the country would approach us?
We need to get a request. This is part of the needs assessment. It's a joint needs assessment.
What does practically our support mean on the ground?
Country of origin information is essential, factual information that is used by case workers that the member states and the third countries that we support assess the claims made by these people in the best possible way. We support, we don't replace, ensuring that those who really need protection get it.
Welcoming you to the third edition of the EUAA podcast. We have covered different topics so far. We have research from different aspects, the field of asylum and migration in the EU and EUA's role within all of that. We have covered asylum knowledge, we went to the operations, and today we have actually a very interesting topic for you. We are going to explore external dimension. So external dimension and the cooperation with third countries is becoming an increasingly more important topic in our work. And today we are going to unpack what does it mean, how does it work on the ground, what does it imply, and what is the benefit for people in need of international protection. And to help us unpack this, today I am joined by Mark Camilleri, who is the current head of the Institution and Horizontal Affairs Center, but also more interestingly, the first employee ever of the European Union Agency for Asylum, previously known as the European Asylum Support Office, EASO. So Mark, very welcome to today's podcast.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me here today and also to talk about this very interesting subject.
I'm sure with the wealth of knowledge of Mark, we could cover a lot of topics, but today we have, unfortunately, to focus only on one external dimension. And when we say external dimension, I think we should first start with explaining what does it mean for our viewers.
In the European Union, we have what is called the Common European Asylum System, which is a framework of rules and practices that member states need to comply with in order to ensure that applications for international protection are dealt with in the same way and also hopefully yield the same type of decision, depending of course on the merits of the individual cases. But the Common European Asylum System has both the internal dimension, which is the one inside the European Union, but also an external dimension to it, which is the cooperation with third countries. And in this agency, we have started from the very early days to look into this aspect, because also from a policy perspective, more attention was being given to this aspect. In fact, more recently, the agency has adopted its 5-year strategy, and one of the 6 main goals of the agency moving forward is in fact the work on the external dimension, and this was followed or let's say coupled by a strategy on external cooperation that sets out how we unfold this type of work, and basically it has 2 main pillars. One pillar is capacity building in third countries, and second pillar is resettlement, where you, as the European Union, we take persons who are recognized as refugees by UNHCR in third countries, and you take them into the EU. But now with the pact, for example, there's the European Union Resettlement Framework Regulation, and that structures this more. And there's also funding for resettlement. As an agency, besides of course promoting this area of work, having workshops so member states discuss, training, but also we have since a few years now what we call the resettlement facility, a resettlement support facility in Turkey. And this is basically a one-stop shop in Turkey, of facilities there, that what member states would need in order to be able to resettle persons from Turkey. They're not necessarily persons from Turkey, they are in Turkey. So they could be, I mean, they are from other countries, of course, but they are recognized by UNHCR as refugees. So we provide this one-stop shop facility. As you know, recently, recently, it was in May 2024, the European Union adopted a new framework of rules, which is called the Pact on Migration and Asylum. It will apply to all the member states. And in it, there are certain aspects that concern also the external dimension of the common European asylum system.
So what does the Pact say on the external dimension?
There's an increased focus on the fact that it's important to ensure that third countries also have asylum systems and reception systems that function. Because ideally, of course, persons fleeing persecution, needing protection, get it closer to home rather than very far away from home. It's important for many reasons. It could even be for simple things like language, culture, but also, I guess, people who have to flee their homes would rather be closer to where their home is rather than being far away. But this doesn't mean that, of course, the European Union should not offer protection to those people who come to the European Union. But we ensure that at least the countries that are in the proximity of the European Union, but also the proximity of countries and regions that might have issues, that they can also offer protection of a certain standard and of a certain with certain guarantees. Now,
we can also mention there that most of the countries we cooperate with indeed are signatories of the Geneva Convention and have this also as part of their national policies.
Indeed, maybe just also to explain that as an agency, we don't just cooperate with any third country. First of all, whatever we do has to be in line with the Union external relations policy. So there are many clear dividing lines and clear focus on how cooperation with third countries and which areas it should happen. Because of course, the European Union works as a whole. We are part of the system. So our strategy, our external cooperation strategy explains how we choose. And we have mainly three categories. The primary focus is on candidate countries, especially those countries that will soon join the European Union, because these are the ones that more urgently need to have their systems up to speed, because they would need to meet the benchmarks of the, in this case, Chapter 24 of the Accession Treaty. So, of course, we help them through what we call roadmaps, because this is our formal vehicle that we use to try to meet these benchmarks. Of course, not on our own, because we are a player in this. There are others also helping.
Who would be our main partners, let's say, in this work?
For sure, you have the External Action Service in these countries, but also the European Commission and UNHCR, IOM, ICMPD, many other partners, including also member states themselves. Some individual member states also have, for various reasons, bilateral support measures with certain third countries. So we want to add value, and this is one of our main principles. Since, of course, we're a rather new agency compared to others, when we started cooperating in this area, and I remember because I worked in it in the first days, it took us some time initially to try to find areas where we could add value, because it's quite a crowded landscape out there. There are many actors that are trying to support third countries. So in order to find our niche, basically, where we could add value, it took some time. And nowadays, again, as I said, in coordination and partnership with other actors, I think we found our niche, and we continue to build it. But that's initially I said there are three levels of priority. So the first priority level is the candidate countries and accession countries. Then the second level of priority is the countries in the neighborhood of the European Union. And then the third category would be those countries that are important in the whole of route approach, we call it. So they are part of the routes that migrants would take. So also we cooperate with those countries. But they're rather the third level of priority. Our main priority, given of course that we have limited staff and limited budget, goes primarily to the candidate country.
Can you maybe give us some examples of countries that we work with? And
Yes.
and I was also interested, if we work with them, you mentioned roadmaps. It sounds like a bilateral agreement. Is the bilateral cooperation the only one we pursue, or we also have some regional approach?
Yes. Indeed. The candidate countries now are mostly the Western Balkan partners, but also we have Turkey and more recently other countries such as Ukraine and Moldova, for example. The vehicle for cooperation, indeed, the formal documentation, is the roadmap, indeed. It's a formal document. But we don't only cooperate bilaterally, but also we cooperate regionally, as you have mentioned, especially with Western Balkans. There are regional measures, and also, in many cases, bilateral measures. These would be important because not all countries have the same needs, even though they might be in a group, but they might not all have the same needs. And this is why our roadmaps exist, because they are based on needs assessment and they are tailor-made.
How does that work in practice? If a country has some particular needs, would we approach the country or the country would approach us?
Of course, our way of working is that we need to get a request. It works the same way in the European Union. When a member state needs our support, they request. But this is part of the needs assessment. It's a joint needs assessment, so we discuss with them. For us, what is important in the external dimension work is the funding for it, the funding and also the human resource aspects. As an agency, we are a very human resource intensive agency. So everything we do involves people, involves experts, involves expertise. So it's not just to have the numbers, but you need to have the specialization. And as you can imagine, the area of international protection is a very specialized one. It's because you're dealing with human beings here. You're dealing with people very often in very difficult situations. People have been through a lot. So you need to have specialists on how to deal with the asylum claims and with the international protection claims in the best possible way. So of course, this is why, as an agency, we need to invest in this type of experts so that we ensure that the type of support that we give both the member states and to third countries is of the highest possible level. But since, of course, as an agency, our main part of our work is the internal dimension of the common European asylum system, so the member states themselves, the resourcing for the support to third countries is a bit more limited. So what we do in order to ensure that this still happens is that, as I mentioned before, in partnership with the Commission, with others, we tap into funding that is available. Commission has a lot of funds available under different programs for these type of initiatives. For example, for the Western Balkan countries, there's the instrument for pre-accession that can be used. So we tap into this type of funds. We co-finance with our own funding, but through such measures, such projects, we can recruit staff linked to those projects. And like that, we can ensure that we have the experts that we would need in order to deliver the support.
Can you maybe give us an example of one project that we had of that type?
Yes, especially with the Western Balkans, we're in the now at the phase of EPA 4. So, so it's a protection-sensitive migration management project that also we do in cooperation with others. So it's not only us, but there are other players like Frontex, like UNHCR involved. and there's funds that come from the Commission as well. So of course, the project itself would need to meet certain criteria in order to move forward. This helps a lot because, and it's a regional project, so it's for the Western Balkan region. Right? So in a lot of ways, it's very helpful to work in this way because also, since as I said, we're rather newcomers to this area, working with others. Also, we ensure that we're not duplicating and that actually we create synergies and provide the best possible support to the third countries involved. But also, we tap into funding provided bilaterally by member states themselves. So, for example, Denmark is supporting certain measures we're doing in the North Africa, for example. So with their own funding. So because the agency can receive funding from member states, voluntary contributions they're called. Same thing, we also receive similar funding from the Czech Republic for similar measures. So in a way, we try to make the best with whatever is available in order to still deliver on this area, albeit with limited resources from our side as an agency.
But now what I would like to unpack is what does practically our support mean on the ground? Which type of activities do we do? How are we providing this support? Because as an agency, we have really a lot of different possibilities within, from training to operational support to capacity building and development to our own experts, a wealth of experts within the agency, reports, etc. So what of all of that are we proposing to our partners in third countries?
Well, indeed, it's a mix of all what you said. It depends on the needs, but mostly, indeed, it's training. There's a lot of training is required, and also now in the coming period with the new pact that will apply, of course, there, as much as we're doing the same thing in member states now at full speed, we would also need to start doing that with third countries, especially with the candidate countries that hopefully soon will join the European Union at some point. So that's for sure one of the things. But also, we support through other measures, for example, through different types of workshops, also involvement of certain experts from third countries, especially the Western Balkan countries, into our own networks. We have several networks here that work on different streams of work.
On asylum processes.
On asylum processes, for example, on country of origin information. Country of origin information is essential, factual information that is used by case workers when they're looking at an asylum application. They would look at if, for example, an applicant says that there's, I don't know, conflicts in certain regions where he or she comes from. The expert can look at the country COI, so the country of origin information, and verify this, whether it's correct or not. It's part of the process. One important thing is that our regulations, our founding regulation, limits us on what we can do in third countries. For example, we cannot deploy experts to support with case processing, for example, with operational support. That's something we do in member states. For example, you have, suddenly there are big flows arriving in a certain member state, and we would send asylum support teams to help them. So this is what we do. We support, we don't replace. We're just supporting, because that was the reason why the agency was created. It's because if you want to have a common system, you need somehow an agency that facilitates this and promotes this and ensures that this the right support is provided where necessary. So it's a system based on responsibility and solidarity, and it's not easy to achieve because it's quite you have 27 national systems running. Now with the pact, the legal basis becomes mostly regulations, meaning that these are directly applicable in member states. So this should facilitate from a legal point of view the application, but then the practice is where we come in. And there we will play an important role also in member states with monitoring, where we will be checking. But in third countries, it's something different. In countries, we support through capacity building. So as you said, with training, with workshops. Also, sometimes we take experts from certain third countries like recently from Turkey, for example, to take them to several member states so that they see how member states do certain types of work. Mindful of the fact, of course, that we're showing them what we believe is the best practice based on our rules, because, of course, our rules in the EU don't apply in third countries, but especially those who aspire to be member states of the candidate countries would need to implement this at some point. So this is what we promote.
And you mentioned previously a bit how you were here from the very beginnings. So I wanted to explore this further. While preparing for this podcast, I discovered that you worked on writing the very first external action strategy of the agency. So you were here with the first steps also of the work on external dimension. So how was it then, and how did you see it evolving through time?
Well, initially it was difficult because, as I said earlier, to find the place for the agency in such a crowded space, it was difficult. And of course, even the management board of the agency and the management of the agency preferred that we focus more on the internal dimension, because we were building the agency initially, so they wanted to see more, Agency is there primarily for them, and they say, so the external dimension was always part of our rules, that we have to work on that, but it was a bit initially on the back burner. But then when we started exploring and discussing with others, with other partners as well, that's like, for example, with UNHCR. UNHCR is part of our management board as well, so they're directly involved. But also with IOM, as I said, ICMPD, External Action Service, and the Commission themselves was also part of our management board. Then we could slowly identify areas of focus. And that's where we could then eventually draft our first strategy that identified the geographical priorities, for example, type of actions we could do, and the general demarcation lines. Of course, the strategy we have today is an improvement, of course, based on the experience that we gathered over a period of time. But indeed, the first actions based on our strategy were also based on projects as well. And one of our first clients was, in fact, Turkey. As you mentioned, we're with Fifth Roadmap. It's a long-standing cooperation with Turkey, and we continue working there as well now.
And if we are already on our time travel journey now, maybe I can already ask you, how do you see the future? Where do you see us going in the next, let's say, 5 years, for example, in terms of international cooperation?
Yes. So I think it will grow significantly in the coming years for us as well as an agency, our role. We are doing a lot, but we can do much more, of course, provided we have the right resourcing. And also some measures that are being discussed now, but we could also play a role. They're always, of course, in partnership with others. But I see it, yes, as an area of growth. And already, when you look at the agency as a whole, compared to what it was 10 years ago, I mean, it's almost unrecognizable as an agency in terms of the impact it has, the importance of the role that it has. So I see the same thing happen also in third countries, where we increase our presence and our importance in this area of work. Similar to what happened with other agencies like Frontex, for example. They nowadays have a very strong external dimension area of work, which grows as well.
What would be our end goal in terms of cooperation with third countries?
Well, of course, especially with candidate countries, is that with our support, as I said, we're not the only ones helping third countries, especially candidate countries, but I hope that these countries would eventually manage to join the European Union, for example, and have the right systems in place in the areas that we support, so in the asylum and reception areas. But we don't have to wait until then, of course, if they would have already their systems in place now. For example, in some of the third countries and candidate countries, we're helping them with contingency planning. This became very important even inside the European Union.
Let's maybe explain a bit for those who don't know.
Contingency planning, of course, means that you would have plans in place in case there are sudden influxes that would affect the country, for example. There are certain events happening around the EU that would produce migratory flows, increased need for reception. So what would you do? How would you deal with this? Many countries did not have plans of this type, even in the European Union, and it's a requirement now that they would have them, and most of them now have them in place because also of the pact. So we try also to promote this in third countries because it's good to be prepared in case these things happen, because when they happened in the past, the European Union was not ready for it. Like in 2015, when you had those flows coming, nobody was really ready to deal with them. This is why the plans need to be in place, so that in case something like this happens in the future, you're prepared, basically. You can never be fully prepared, of course, but at least there's a plan and that you can follow it in such instances, yes. We want to ensure, as an agency, that the member states and the third countries that we support, that they assess the claims made by these people in the best possible way, in the fairest possible way, and hopefully yielding a decision that is fair, in line with the rules, also with the international rules that apply, and we are ensuring that those who really need protection get it in the European Union or, of course, in the third countries, if we're talking about third countries. And if not, then that's something else. But if a person needs protection, we need to ensure that that happens, because offering protection is one of the core values of the European Union. So we're here ensuring that this value is upheld through our support to the member states.
Thank you for this very inspiring last message. I think we can end with this and continue doing our best to provide help to those who really need it, and via all the different activities that we do, and including through our great work in the external dimension. Thank you very much for joining us today, and we are looking forward to seeing you on future podcast episodes.